Right now, an exclusive interview with Bob Stefanowski. The Republican candidate for governor says he will eliminate the state income tax, but can he do it? We'll ask him to explain how he'll get it done. And why should voters choose him over Ned Lamont or Oz Griebel? We'll ask him that too, along with some of your questions. It's all straight ahead this Sunday morning, October 14th, 2018.
From Eyewitness News, Connecticut's most watched local political program, this is Face the State.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Dennis House. This October, we are joined by the three candidates for governor, Oz Griebel, Ned Lamont, and Bob Stefanowski, the three who appeared in the Yukon WFSB debate. Mr. Stefanowski is with us here today. He is 56 years old. He is a New Haven native, living now in Madison, and he has a business background, including General Electric. And Mr. Stefanowski, we thank you so much for being with us here on the program.
Thanks for having me. A full 30 minutes today.
Full 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's actually, I think, 23.7 after commercials, but we'll take what we can get.
All right.
I want to ask you, first of all, because the income tax, getting rid of it, has been the cornerstone of your campaign since you started running. And yet everyone I talk to says, you know, I like to hear that, yet I don't know that he can actually get it done. So I'm going to give you the opportunity to explain it in detail, exactly how it gets done, beginning with the timeline. When will it be gone?
Well, I appreciate the question. First of all, just to point out, you know, before 1991, Connecticut didn't have an income tax. So it's interesting to me, Dennis, that people say it's impossible to do something that the state's already done. In the 25 years before we had that income tax, Connecticut was the fastest growing state in the entire country. In the 25 years since, we're the only state that hasn't recovered the jobs from the Great Recession. We have a horrible economy, so it shows the power of tax policy. I would say number two, it's an 8-year plan. We've got no tax cuts in the first 2 years. We're going to gradually phase it in as we can afford to do it. But I firmly believe, and we've seen the opposite of this with Dan Malloy, if we lower the tax rate, we're going to get businesses to come back in, we're going to get people to stay here, we're going to get them to have more disposable income. That's going to drive jobs and this economy forward. We've seen the exact opposite from Dan Malloy. Despite two of the largest tax increases in the history of the state, the economy's going down. So it's time for a change. It really is.
But people and companies won't move right away to pick up that gap that would come from the income tax.
Right.
When do you see it gone? What year would it be completely gone?
Well, it's over 8 years. As you know, we have a balanced budget requirement in the state. We'll have it tied to revenue triggers. But the other point, Dennis, is we have to start to reduce it. People have two choices in this election. They have me, who's going to reduce it and get rid of it over 8 years, and we've got Ned Lamont, who's going to increase taxes. So even if you don't think I can get it done, which I will get it done, but even if you don't think that, most of the people I talk to would rather have somebody who's going to work really, really hard to cut cost, get it down, get this economy moving, use the increased proceeds to invest in education and health care and all the important things that we need to do.
In the last couple of years before the income tax was implemented in 1991, Connecticut was fading a bit, and we had tolls before that in the 80s, but you don't want to bring tolls back to help make up the, to offset the difference.
Tolls is a horrible answer. We already have 300 taxes and fees on the state of Connecticut, and the concept that we can put yet one more tax on, which a toll is a tax, that we're suddenly going to get a different answer, it's a flawed philosophy. It really is. Why do people think that if we take more money out of the taxpayers of Connecticut, we're suddenly going to have a different outcome than what we've had over the last 8 years? It's common sense that we need to do the opposite.
One of our viewers, Joanne Fields of Thomaston, wrote in. She goes, what do you have against tolls? Because we could use that money to fix roads and bridges, and we pay them anyway. We just pay tolls to New York and Massachusetts. Yeah,
well, first of all, unfortunately, in Connecticut, we cannot have tolls just on the border. If we do it, they have to be throughout the state. You're going to end up with congestion pricing. The proposal was for 86 toll stops on I-95. A typical worker in Connecticut is going to be going through 3 tolls on their way to work. And you can't trust the government to use that money to fix the roads and bridges. We saw it with the gas tax. First, they create a lockbox. Why the government needs a lockbox to prove that they're going to do what they say is one thing. And then when the general fund has a deficit, they raid the lockbox with the gas tax, and nothing gets done. So another tax, another toll is not the way to go, Dennis. It's really not.
Let's talk about this phase out of the income tax. What will voters see within the first year of your governorship, should you be elected?
The first year, they're going to see cost cuts. They're going to see a $40 billion budget where 10% of that will be easy to take off. When I was the CFO of UBS, Dennis, we went in and we used zero-based budgeting. I had every department come in and I said, I don't care what was in your budget last year. Let's assume it's zero. And when you start with zero and you only add back in what you absolutely have to have, you can take out cost. The UBS, we took out 10% of the cost, we save $1 billion a year. I guarantee you there's more waste, fraud, and abuse in the government of Connecticut than we had in UBS. That's $4 billion. I can use that to fund a tax cut. I can use that to invest in education. I can use that to invest in healthcare. There's a lot of good things we can do with that. We also need to reprioritize. Look at the bus from New Britain to Hartford. $600 million for a 9-mile bus route. It's $1,000 an inch. Think of what we could have done with that money, Dennis. Look at what happened in the bonding 2 weeks ago. The governor spends $5 million for a property in Orange, Connecticut that's worth $500,000. Look at what we could have done with that money. So is there any silver bullet? No. But we can add up $5 million here, $10 million there, $20 million there, and start to get this economy moving. We can absolutely do it, Dennis.
You've talked about getting rid of waste and fraud, and during the Yukon debate, I asked you to give me some examples of waste, and you cited transportation, and you just talked about the busway, now called Connecticut Fast Track. If elected governor, will you shut that down?
The bus?
The busway.
No, I think it's fine to have it. Unfortunately, it's a sunk cost. We need to look at how to run it more efficiently. People that I talk to say it's 20% occupied every day, so maybe we need to change the service, but it's just the perfect example of this people in Hartford taking your viewers' taxpayer money, their money. It's not Hartford's money. It's the people of Connecticut's money, and not spending it efficiently. We have to start to run the state like a business with accountability, with discipline, with fiscal conservatism, following a budget. We haven't had that in the last 8 years, Dennis, and I've been doing it for 30 years. And that's why I'm doing as well as I am, because people want to change, they want leadership, and they want accountability.
Which other transportation systems do you believe to be wasteful?
Metro North is a great example. I've been doing a lot of work with David Stemmerman, former competitor of ours. If we can get that commute time down by 30 minutes, imagine what that would do for housing prices in Fairfield County. Metro North is the perfect example of a monopoly. The service goes down and the price goes up. So again, if we were to take a competitive approach to that, fix the rail times, get some of the traffic off of I-95, relieve that, it could be transformational for this state.
And how do you plan on doing that, on making Metro North more efficient?
Public-private partnerships. Other states have done it. There's a ton of capital out there just waiting to be invested in Connecticut. You can cut a great deal with them if you know what you're doing, and I've been doing it for 30 years. What's one of the few things that works on I-95? The rest areas. You go in, you go to McDonald's, you go to Dunkin' Donuts, it's relatively clean. You know why it works so well? Because the private sector runs it. The private sector, 9 times out of 10, is going to be much better at running these things. Look at the Department of Motor Vehicles. You have to take a half day off of work to get your license renewed. The wait lines are out the door. They replaced the computer systems 2 years ago for $25 million, and they still don't work. What does Ned Lamont want to do? He wants to spend another $25 million to try to do it again. How many chances are we going to give that agency? Privatize it, take the employees that are good over to the new entity, apply some fiscal discipline, bring some capital in, and get that moving. We have to start doing things differently, Dennis.
You've said in terms of saving money in the budget that you would sit down with the unions and ask them to make more concessions. They don't have to sit down, but
absolutely.
But you're going to persuade them. And how will you do that, and what will you ask them to do?
Well, let me step back on that. I mean, first of all, you've got a lot of hardworking people that have worked for this state for decades, and they have religiously paid into this plan, and now they're counting on it for their retirement. It's a horrible situation we're in. And there's a bunch of governors, including Republican governors, that never funded it. And it's horrible where we are right now. But I'm not doing state employees any good, and I'm not doing the state of Connecticut any good by not facing up to the facts. That plan with debt is $100 billion underfunded. It's $30,000 per person in Connecticut. So we have to try to keep the retirement safe. We have to give them some security, but those checks are going to bounce, Dennis. And by me not having an honest discussion with union employees and the state of Connecticut to figure out something that we can have be sustainable, and that I can put my right hand up and say, I'm going to deliver it to you for the next 4 years, that's what we're going to do. And most of the rank and file employees I talk to, Dennis, they get it. They know they have a problem, and they don't want to hear hollow promises anymore.
We're going to take a quick break. More with Republican candidate for Governor Bob Stefanowski after these messages. And if you'd like to watch past interviews of Face the State, including our interview last week with Oz Gribble, you can do so on the Channel 3 app right now or on our YouTube channel.